Easy Security is using the SQL profiler for recording permissions. We need a template to be imported and is delivered with the installation folder. It's always a good idea to add an additional service tier, because to get all the permissions right, we need to restart this service tier to get everything working properly. You can also set up a special profiler template, so you don't really have to do any manual entry. You can just immediately go start it, and you always have to restart the service tier before you actually record if you want to get the permissions and even data security actually correct in 2013. I have a 2013 R2 in here, and to do recording, we would actually use the SQL profiler. This is part of the SQL Management Studio, but only of the full version. So if you have the Express, you won't find the SQL profiler. In our files we deliver, we have a SQL profiler folder in here. This one is the Easy Security installation folder. And this one is for each NAV version or each SQL version that is out there. So to do recordings for 2013, I will need the 2012 SQL template down here. So I'll import that template. (2012) template down here, and I just imported this one in here. I can also go make this one my default. So if I actually edit my template and I'm looking at 2012 NAV Easy Security, I'll use this one as my default one. So the only thing you use the profiler for is recording, then you can do that one. To run a trace in here, you would actually need the permission alter trace in SQL. You don't need to be a high level in the database, you just need to have the alter trace permission in here. But then I can go in, I can connect. I have a event selections and things like that one. I can filter in specific databases. With 2013, it is a little different with the login, where you actually need to go in and use a different login than what the user is, because you can't really see it in the database. But if I go run this one, I'll see that this one now sits here and start working. If I go back to NAV and I go back to my sales, order processing, customer, for example, down here, I'll see that it starts doing a lot more things. I'll just read that additional data in here. So, but I'm just going to stop this tracing here for now. So that's the initial part of setting up the SQL profiler by importing the template. One thing is, with NAV, you typically have a lot of users using the same service tier. So we really want to set up an additional service tier that is only being used by the one user doing the recording in here. To do that, I'll use a different user in here. So if I go and look at my PC down here and manage that one, I can look at local users down here, and I have a list of users. I'm going to add a new one in here, and it's just going to be called recording. And it's important here, by the way, that the password never expires on these ones. And there's really not a lot of people that need to know this one. The only thing we need to know is this one up here. The rest of it can be left for the IT person doing this one. But I'll create this new user in here called recording, and that's basically all I want. Then I want to open up my NAV 2013 R2 administration. And from that one, I can actually add a second service tier in here. And I have my current service tier down here, and I have all my information in here. I have the user that is running it is currently my Windows account in here. I'll be able to see that in here. On the login account out here, I could see that one. I want to add a new one in here. So I want to add an instance, and I'm just going to call this one recording. I need to select the port number that is not in use, and in my computer that's would be this one in here. And instead of the network service, I'm actually going to select a user account down here. And my username is going to be recording. My domain here is called demo, and my password was this one in here. And then I'm going to add this new service tier down here. So now I have my new service tier. It running on the same demo database and everything else, but I now set up this one. And so I can go here and start this one. And it actually won't work right now because there's one thing I would have to do. I'll have to go in the SQL database and actually allow that user to have access to the SQL database. So if I go here and select my new server, I picked 66 in here, and I called it recording. As I try to connect, it will take a little while, but then it normally tells me that I don't have, or the service tier is not ready to be used right now. So it's currently not ready to serve request, and that typically means you don't have access in the SQL database. So let's go to SQL Management Studio. And now see in here, I have the network service, but I don't have my recording user in here. So let's go in here and pick another Windows user. And I was calling it recording. Did I misspell that user? Oh, I need to add it to SQL first in here. That's my guess. So the user now exists in SQL. So now I can of course go add them in here. And there will be a Windows here login. And I'm just going to give it the same name down here. And I'm going to make it DB owner to be able to run as a service tier in here. So oh, they have nothing against my. It was just my text that was wrong in there. So now I should be able to go and restart my service tier. And I can now see my database. I can go into my Kronos EC Security in here and open up that one in here. This service tier is now starting from scratch. So if I actually went to my SQL profiler now and started a new trace, I can, under event selection, now go in and say I only want to have the login name that starts with recording or has recording in it, and run this one in here. So now if I had multiple service tiers and all kinds of things, I wouldn't capture that one. If for each service tier I had multiple users or many users in the standard one, I only capturing for the one running as demo recording. I'm not capturing for the other users. This one can actually be done in the template. So if I stop these two traces, I can go to my template, edit my template in here. Under event selection, actually go do my filter in here and say only something that has recording in it. Save this one as a NAV EC Security. And I would also like to make that my default. So I'll go in and select my default in here, and it's already checked. So now all I have to do is just click on this one and click run. And then it's now only recording for this one service tier on my computer. So I can now go in and go through a process. Like I will go into edit a customer. And when recording, it's very important to close the screen, because until the screen is closed, it's not saved in the database in here. So then I can go stop this trace, save it as a trace XML file in here. I'm going to save it on my local computer here. If I go back to EC Security, I can go in, create a new role for this one. Add my recording, then import my SQL profiler trace. At this point, it's very important you select a path that is actually commented. If I select the C:temp, if my service tier was running on a different computer, it would actually not be able to see that file. So you need to have something where you access it over the network. The best option is typically to put a file on or folder on the service tier that you actually share. And of course, remember that the user running the service tier also needs to have access to this folder in here. And as you can see, I get an error in here. And that's actually because the folder I selected in here has been set up as a share, but my recording user did not have access to it in here. So if I go in here to my temp folder, look at my properties under sharing, security in here, I can see network service, user, and administrator have access. But my recording user don't have access. So let's go add recording in here. And I'm just going to give it full control and apply that one. And let's go back and import that recording again. And now it's importing fine in here. So there's several things that has to be right in here. and it can be a little tricky. But add the new service tier with a specific user. Add the user in the database so they get access to run the service tier. Add the user in the shared folder, and then you can set up the SQL profiler to auto filter on that single user when you actually do it in here. So this one is a very important part of 2013 R2 to get all these technical components actually running properly in here. As the import finished, I'll now be able to see all the events sorted by user, company, and database in here. So if I wanted to, I could actually not include certain ones. In general, with 2013 R2, there's several processes actually running that will read objects and things like that one. So you really don't want to uncheck some if it's just using the database but not a company in here. If there was multiple companies but you only used in one, it could be intercompany, but it could also be that more users actually was connected in here. But as I select OK in here, I got 98 permissions in here for this recording in here. So I could go back here and update my role, and I'll see I get a lot more based on my source code analyzer in here. One very important feature is if I actually want to go in and say, okay, I just want to continue this tracing here. I'm not restarting the service tier. I'm just redoing the same process again. With all the caching going on in NAV, that's not a very good idea in here. So if I go in here and look at this one, I'll go in, I'll find my customer again, and I'll get rid of my change that I did before. And then I actually click OK down here. That's exactly what I did before. Now I stop this trace, save it as a trace XML file, and I'll call it edit customer, no restart, and go and create a new role for that one in here. I'll add my new recording, select my file, no restart. If I look at the size, by the way, I can clearly see there's a difference in size also out here, by the way. So my process finished in here. I'll see now I even have a search process ID down here, and I'll just select all those ones again. Before I got 98 permission, now I only got 43 recorded permissions in here. And this one is actually both table data, but it's also a lot of objects not being captured in here. So it is very important for both data and object level security to actually include that one. And even if I here go update my role, I can see I only got 107 permissions in here actually. So not restarting the service tier is not a good idea when actually recording permissions in here. Yeah, but basically we added the new SQL or in the new template in here. We edited the template to put the username in there, so we only get those ones for that other service tier. So if we wanted to do all this one and get everything right, I would need to go here and say, okay, my recording service tier, I want to restart that one. And since I'm the only user that should be connected to this one, the other people will be using the standard service tier. Nobody else is really affected by this one restarting down here. That means I can actually go in and say restart the service tier. When it comes back, I can reopen the client. It will now have a blank object cache and blank data cache, and then I can go in and do the process again in here. So if I go back and say I restarted my service tier, everything is up and running fine now. I go into start my trace again, blanks it out, go edit my customer. go back here and stop my trace, save it as a trace XML file. I'll call this one here restart. Again, the process of creating roles is exactly the same in here. So go into roles, add a new one, add my recording, and import my SQL profiler trace. Of course, I could have done all this one into the same file in here, or into the same role. Now I'm doing it in different roles in here at this time. So, but basically, this one is the process to do all this one. So again, after restarting the service tier, I get the same permissions that I originally got in here. So, and I can add my role and update or recording and update my role, and I get the same permission as before. There is a table in Easy Security that actually is being used for the lookup, and it's under roles and logins and details. There's SQL object names in here, and it's being populated as you work through it in here. But you can actually insert all the names up front and actually have this lookup table being generated based on the normal rules in here. And that's really because the object name in NAV is different from the table name in SQL. So this one will actually speed up the import process in the beginning here, as you populate this table, because then it will do less searches in the object table. But else, remember to restart the service tier, set up a folder where that is on the network that both the service tier and the user have access to, add all the trace permission to be able to run this function, and then you should be good to go with recording.